Call committee meeting in order. Village clerk, please call roll.
Burgess. Here. Jones. Here. Myers. Here. Tate. Here. Washington. Here. Myers. I'm sorry, did I say Myers? Williams. Here. Trustee Williams is present by the phone.
All right. Starting with the board, I'd like to move to item number 3 first. We have representatives here from INCOR. As long as anyone doesn't have a problem, then we'll go back to item number 2. I don't see anyone, so we'll move to item number 3. Maybe come on up. This is an ordinance of the Village of Sauk Village, Cook and Will, Illinois, supporting the renewal of the Class 8 real estate tax classification for 21701 South Mark Collins Drive. If you would, please state your name. And first of all, make sure you speak very loud. We're sitting underneath the dome, so it sounds like you're echoing, but the residents in the back cannot hear if you don't speak loud and into the mic. So if you would just state your name for the record.
My name is Katie Lightborn. Caitlin Fitzpatrick.
Alrighty. So what you have before you tonight is an ordinance. This is the area, for everyone that knows, it's over in TIF area number 3. And it's over by the Bear Paint, where Bear Paint is located. So I'll go ahead and let you, if you have a presentation or anything you want to say, or...
Sure. We're here to request a renewal ordinance for the Class 8 at the building. Not loud enough.
Go ahead. We probably almost have to eat that mic.
We're here to request a renewal of the ordinance of the Class 8 for the property at 21.
I think your mic just died. You want to give me that mic right there? Starting off really good.
Take 3.
21701.
We're requesting a renewal of the Class 8 tax incentive ordinance for the property at 21701 South Mark Collins Drive. We have 2 tenants in the building currently. Both of their leases are set to expire in 2017, and this tax incentive is critical to renewing these leases and keeping the tenants in place.
Does anyone have any questions? Trustee Myers.
Use the mic, please.
Can you tell us what kind of business you're looking to put in there?
There's already businesses in there. There's 2 businesses located.
Right.
I remember Bear Paint, but the second one I can never. Right there. If you can pass her the mic, should I give you the names of the companies that are already in there?
The other one is Lewis Getz.
Lewis Getz.
They make valves and whatnot and supply many manufacturers and some to the U.S. military. Correct. It's a large warehouse. Bear Paint occupies the majority of it, and Lewis Getz is a minority occupant.
Approximately square footage is going to cover.
The building is 258,000 square feet.
That's the whole building.
Correct.
Just this last one that you just mentioned, that's going to be at the far end.
Trustee, they're already located there. This is just a renewal.
I know, sir. I've been in that building many times when the alarm goes off.
So Lewis Getz occupies 38,000 square feet of the building.
Thank you.
Trustee Burgess.
I just had a couple of questions. Is this renewal, your renewal is due to be up in 17 for the last Class 8?
That's correct.
Okay, so then you're asking for another 10 or 20 years? How many years are you asking for?
The Class 8 is a 12-year incentive.
12 year, okay.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll have this on the agenda for next Tuesday night for approval. So thank you very much for coming out. All right, move back to item number 2, review of audit, fiscal year ending date of April 30th, 2015. You got the auditors here. I think there's, yeah, you got a chair over there. All right, and then, if you,
Thank you, Mayor and the board. The auditors, Ms. Susan Jones, principal, as well as Faye Rafal-Coles, if I pronounce correctly, are here to present the audit for 2014 and 15. If you have any questions, you may put it directly to the auditors. Thank you very much.
all right, thank you.
Rofalikos, R-O-F-A-L-I-K-O-S.
All right, we'll go back and let you go first. And
Good evening, everybody. So there's 3 deliverables that we would like to go through this evening. One is the final audit report for April 30th, 2015. The other is our required communications letter to the committee, and then the other is our management letter, recommendation letter. I'm going to start going through the 2015 audited financial statements and go through the major highlights of that. If you go past the table of contents, and that's in the blue bound book, page 1 is our audit opinion, and it is an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance the village can receive. Past the audit opinion really begins the basic financial statements, the statement of net position. The statement of net position on page 5 is presented on a full accrual basis. So all the long-term assets as well as the long-term liabilities of all governmental activities and business type activities are included on the statement. At the end of the year, governmental activities net position was in a deficit position of $15.9 million, and business type activities, which is water and sewer, was in a positive net position of $3.3 million, so for a combined deficit of $12.6 million. If you turn to page 6 and 7, this is the statement of activities, or the income statement, again presented on a full accrual basis. It has all the revenues generated both by the governmental activities and the business type activities. And you can see on page 7 there was an increase in net position on a combined basis of $2.6 million. But there was also an increase in net position of governmental activities of $1.9 million and business type activities of $732,000. So the overall deficit balance was reduced from 2014 to 15 by $2.6 million. Turning to page 8 is the balance sheet as of April 30th, 2015 of governmental funds. This is presented on what's called a modified accrual basis, which basically means the long-term assets and long-term liabilities of the village are not included in this statement. This is more what you see on an interim basis. You could see on a combined fund basis, combined fund balance was a positive $10.9 million. All of the funds, individual funds, were in a positive fund balance position, except the general fund was in a deficit position of $1.8 million, and Sauk Point Industrial Park Fund was in a small deficit position of $176,000. Turning to page 9, this is just a reconciliation. It takes net position on a full accrual basis from the previous statement and reconciles it to the fund balance. And the major reconciling items are just those long-term assets and long-term liabilities that are included in one statement but not the other. Turning to page 10, this is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for fiscal year 2015 by major fund. It shows all the revenues generated by the village during fiscal year 15 offset by expenditures and transfers.
Overall, on a combined basis, there was an increase in fund balance of $274,000. So end of the year combined governmental fund balance was $10.9 million. All of the funds had an increase in fund balance outside of the non-major funds and the logistics center fund. And page 11, similar to the previous reconciliation, just takes the changes in increase in fund balance on a full accrual to a modified accrual and just shows the reconciling items. On page 12 and 13, these are a further detail of the enterprise funds, water and sewer. So on page 12 is the statement of net position. Overall, the water fund had a net position of $2.4 million, and the sewer fund had a net position of $891,000, for a combined balance of $3.3 million. And on page 13 is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. So basically the income statement activity for fiscal year 15. Overall, there was an increase in net position on a combined enterprise fund basis of $732,000. Majority of that increase came from the water fund of $743,000, offset by a small decrease in the sewer fund of about $11,000. Page 14 just shows the cash flows of the water and the sewer fund. And page 15 is just a different presentation of that statement of cash flows, showing the cash generated from operating activities on a combined enterprise fund basis was $933,000. On page 16, this is the fiduciary funds of the village. These are not included in the government-wide statements. Majority of these fiduciary funds consist of the pension trust funds of the of the police and fire. And so on a combined basis, total net position of the fiduciary funds was about $5.8 million at the end of April 30th, 2015. And again, on page 17 just shows the changes in the pension trust funds and the end of year net position of $5.8 million. On page 18, before I move into the footnotes, does anybody have any questions so far on the?
Yeah, I do, but I'll wait till.
Okay.
Because you go in section by section, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, but I do have questions on the first section that you just went over, and I just.
Let's ask the question. Ask the question while we're here.
Okay, now back on page 5, the water and sewer, that's what's supposed to be in there, correct?
In the business type activities,
Yes.
is the water and sewer funds.
Right, and that's the amount that should be there as of April 30th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any communications, because I know they did recommend last year that if we borrow from the fund, there should be some type of note, letter, or correspondence stating how much we borrowed. Did you find anything like that when you did your audit? About, say for instance, we took 100,000 out here, 50,000 out there at that particular time, because there's not this much in the water fund right now, but then again, this was a year ago. But I'm just asking, was there any communications that you saw that the village borrowed from that fund, as was stated last year at the...
So on page 5, you can see there were internal kind of borrowings between the governmental activities and the business type activities of $552,000. On a combined basis, it nets out to zero. Do you see at the top of
Yes,
the page?
I do. I see that 559 current internal balances. But I'm asking,
There is, in our management letter recommendation, documentation could still be improved with regard to the authorization of those.
Did you see
borrowings.
that when you did your?
It's still a comment for 15.
Okay, I'm just saying, but you didn't see any type of communication when you did your audit that money was taken out of the fund at such and such a time, and how much?
Well, we know how much because the balances are right here, and there was detail in the general ledger that supported, you know, the balances going from one fund to the other.
Okay, because right now, there's not that, nowhere near that amount in there right now. And I'm just, you know, I know that we've borrowed so far close over $1 million from the water fund. That's what I was asking. Is there anything from last year, not now? Because this is just now, but last year, was there anything in there showing that money was taken out? Because you did make that recommendation at your last audit review.
Yeah, so there were internal fund balances and borrowings. It's totaled as of a point in time, April 30th, 2015, of the $552,000. We do still have a management letter point that was repeated from the prior year that has, you know, documentation with regard to those borrowings still needs to be better formalized.
Okay. Well, this is just water and sewer, so, you know, that was my first concern. It was just the water and sewer. Because right now, there's nothing near that in there in the water fund. I think it's maybe $400,000 or $500,000. This is showing $3 million, so I understand that things have to be paid, but I just wanted to know.
And when you compare the 3.3 million to what you're saying, we haven't seen, you know, fiscal year 16 activity
Correct.
yet. That might be on a modified accrual basis and not a, you know, full accrual basis that's presented here. So that could be part of the difference that you're seeing.
Okay.
Any other questions on what was covered so far? All right, guess we can move on then.
Page 18 is the index to the notes to the financial statements. The notes go from pages 18 to page 80. I wanted page 22. There was a new accounting pronouncement adopted. GASB 67 was adopted. It didn't impact any of the basic financial statements. However, with regard to the fire and police pension funds are audited by other auditors, and we include their information in our notes to the financial statements. So some of the note information related to the pension funds, there's been added disclosures with regard to the description of the fund and some other unfunded balances. And this GASB 67 was required to be adopted by all pension funds. And then the separate section at the bottom of page 22 talks about significant GASB statements that will be required to be adopted by the village for fiscal year 16. And basically what these pronouncements are going to do is take the unfunded pension liabilities of the police and fire and record it in the statement of net position. And all governmental entities have to adopt GASB 68 and 71. Some of them adopted them during fiscal year 15, but because of the April 30th cutoff of most municipalities, they don't need to adopt it until fiscal year 16. On page 50, just wanted to point everybody out to, this is just a roll forward of all the long-term liabilities of the village that are recorded in the statement of net position. It shows the beginning balance, the additions, the retirements and payments. So that ending balance of 39.9 million is recorded in the statement of net position for governmental activities. And then the 3.7 million at the bottom of the page relates to the business type activities, sewer and water. So on page 81, This section is the required supplemental information. These schedules are required for financial reporting purposes. The majority of the schedules just give some further information on IMRF liabilities as well as the police and fire pension. So this shows the funding progress. So on page 81 it shows that the unfunded actuarial liability, it's basically 73% funded. These disclosures are all consistent with the prior year. I just want to point out a couple new required schedules on page 84. This is the firefighters pension fund. This is required as a result of the adoption of GASB 68. It's just additional disclosure information on the net pension liability. And so next year, that $1.1 million will be recorded in the village's statement of net position as a result of the adoption of GASB 68. And then on page 88 is the same schedule for the police pension fund, and that net pension liability of $8.4 million will be recorded in the village's statement of net position next year. And then on page 91, through the rest of the report, is just additional detail information by each major fund of the revenues and expenditures, and some additional schedules related to descriptions of the debt that's outstanding. So that kind of concludes the formal presentation on the financial statements. Does anybody have any questions?
Trustee Tates, can you hand him the mic, please?
Good evening. I just received the audit packet maybe a half an hour ago, so I have not had a chance to actually review it. My question is that, are you planning on returning, because once I read through all this, I may have questions at that time. Are you returning to answer additional questions, or exactly what's the protocol from here forth?
Anytime anybody from the committee or the board would like to talk to us about questions, be happy to answer them throughout the year or at any point in time. We'll be coming back to start planning for next year's audit, and we usually do that like the May, June timeframe, formally, physically here, but obviously at any time the board or the trustees have any questions, they can feel free to call me at any time.
Okay. Mayor, what's the protocol for further questions?
Yeah, I think probably it should go through the finance director, and then if you can't get the answers, you can get them on the phone. So I think it probably should go through the finance director first, rather than putting it toward the auditors. So, I mean, Mohan's been very much involved with all this, the auditing.
Oh, yes.
So he's spent hours and hours working with them, getting the information that they've requested, and he understands it, so he's probably still dreaming about it in his sleep. So, but I mean, if we have to get you back here, we can get you back here. Trustee? Yeah, I mean, if he can't answer your question, I mean, he should be able to answer your questions, but Trustee Burgess?
I have just a simple summary question. Based on your report and based on the financial situation in the village, is there a way you can let us know in numbers where we stand, how we solve it? In other words, how much money we're in debt versus how much money we have. Is there a summary for that? In other words, how much do we owe? I mean, I saw debt service, but everything else is involved in that too. And versus, quite naturally, our assets and everything like that are involved in that. But I just wanted a kind of a quick summary of where we're at as far as a village, how much How much debt are we in?
So I guess I would just bring you back to page 50. No, J, the long-term liabilities. You know, as of in the governmental activities, total outstanding debt is $39.9 million. 3.2 of that amount is due within, you know, fiscal year 16. And that's for the governmental activities. For the business type activities, which includes water and sewer, there's 3.7 million debt outstanding, of which about 194,000 is due within, you know, fiscal year 16.
Okay.
But just so we make sure it's clear that we've been going down every year. If you look at the balance as of May of 2014, we were 41.5 million, almost 41.6. So this is, you know, we're paying off our deficit. Again, it's slowly, but now we're down to 39.9.
Correct. So this table on page 50 is really a roll forward of the activity from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So it shows, you know, the additions, the retirements or the payments, and as the mayor said, the beginning balance was 41.6 million versus at the end of the year it's 39.9 million.
And we've been going, that number has been getting lower every year. So we've been working really hard on that.
I saw that you added in the IEPA forgiveness part of the loan that we just got. You just added that in, but it still shows a balance of 3.6 mil and 154,000.
As of April 30th, 2015, only 650,000 was formally signed on the dotted line forgiven.
Okay.
I know there was talk and discussion about more possibly being forgiven, but as of the date of our audit, it was not formally signed on the dotted line.
And that's why you have the 154,000, correct?
Correct. That's why we even have the, you know, the 3.6 million that's outstanding as of April 30th, correct?
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, next part.
The next letter that I want to go through is our management letter recommendation. As part of our audit procedures, we do consider the internal controls of the village. We issue an opinion on the financial statements, but we don't issue a separate opinion on the internal controls. But we did have some recommendations. We did identify some material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. As you can note, the majority of the comments are just repeated from prior years, so I won't go through those in details. You know, the most significant ones being, you know, segregation of duties with the limited finance resources. It's hard for people with, you know, limited resources in the finance function to segregate all the duties so that people that have access to the asset, to the checks, and have access to the general ledger, ideally in a perfect world, those duties would be separated. But given the limited resources here at the village, that's hard to do. There are...
which would require us hiring additional
resources, personnel resources.
Thank you.
There are controls in place that help mitigate that risk by the mayor signing off on checks, and then dual signatures being required on checks. But it's just something per auditing standards that we have to disclose to you.
Trustee Burgess.
Are these things that you just think that's number 2, are they being adhered to, or these are just your suggestions? I mean, did you see some of these things being adhered to?
Yeah, like bank reconciliations are being performed. Dual signatures we do see on checks. We see the mayor signing off on, you know, the checks that we tested. And then obviously there's oversight by the board of financial information and things like that. And I just want to point out to you on page 6 of this letter, at the bottom of the letter, there's a couple bullet points of various comments that were in last year's letter that were not repeated this year because they have been implemented by the village. So each year we have a large list of items that we pointed out, but given the resources the village has, they try to implement some additional procedures, and you can see a few of them fell off last year's list. I'm going to turn it over to Faye right now, and she's just going to go through our required communications per auditing standards.
Does everybody have a copy of the letter? So, like Susan mentioned, this letter is something that's required under auditing standards to be provided to those charged with governance of the entity which is under audit. The letter begins by describing our responsibility in a financial statement audit, and that is to form and express an opinion on the financial statements which have been prepared by management, and to express an opinion on whether those statements are presented in all material respects in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles, which in this case we believe they have been, and our audit opinion reflects that. As part of the auditing standards, we are required to consider internal controls when we are planning our audit procedures, but like Susan mentioned, we are not required to express an opinion on the internal controls or provide any assurance on whether they're operating effectively. Going on to the next page, if the village were to include our audited financial, or the village's audited financial statements with our opinion in any other documents, we would need to take a look at that and make sure there was no inconsistent information. So for example, if the village were to issue debt and include the statements in there, we would ask that you notify us ahead of time so that we can review the documents that contain those financial statements in it. We performed the audit in accordance with our engagement letter. Ultimately, the audit was not completed in the originally planned time frame, and that was due to a few reasons, including delays in the police pension and firefighters pension fund, as well as certain difficulties experienced as far as getting reconciled account balances and supporting evidence in a timely fashion. We did ultimately, we feel that we received full cooperation from the finance team, and we're able to base our audit opinion off of that, off of the support that we did receive. Moving on page 2, our firm is required to comply with certain requirements related to ethics, and we are in compliance with those requirements. The next section just kind of recaps some of the items that are within the footnotes to the financial statements, which Susan just walked us through. So all of the most significant accounting policies in the village's financial statements are in footnote A. There were no major changes from the prior year other than the implementation of GASB 67, which didn't affect the village's financial statements themselves, but those of the 2 pension funds, which have been included. Moving to page 3, there's quite a long list of accounting pronouncements which will be effective over the next few years. The management doesn't know at this time whether they will all have a significant impact or any on the village, but we do know that there are 2 which will definitely be effective in fiscal year 16. That's GASB 68 and GASB 71. And like Susan mentioned, those are related to the pension plans and will require many significant changes, including recording the actual pension liability on the village's balance sheet. And that will be required for all local governments in fiscal year 16 if they have not already implemented it in fiscal year 15. Moving to page 4, there's always accounting estimates inherent in any set of financial statements. The most significant ones in the village's financial statements are the allowance for doubtful accounts related to receivables from property taxes and utility billings. Other significant estimates also include the assumptions that roll into the calculation of pension liabilities and other post-employment benefit obligations. So we reviewed, the key factors and assumptions that management has represented that relate to these estimates, and we found those key assumptions to be reasonable. And there are also many disclosures obviously included in the financial statements, but we believe the most significant or most sensitive disclosures are, again, those related to the liabilities for the IMRF and other post-employment benefit plans, as well as the police pension and firefighters pension plans, as well as the disclosures related to water supply contamination remediation and those related to the useful lives of capital assets. Like we mentioned before, we're required to communicate any difficulties encountered during the audit. As we mentioned, there were certain delays experienced in needing the final firefighters and police pension fund audits to be completed in order to issue our statements, as well as certain other difficulties encountered with reconciling all account balances, but we do feel that we did receive full cooperation from the finance department and were able to base our opinion off of the audit evidence that we obtained. The next section of the letter talks about any corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So there were certain misstatements identified which were not recorded and are not reflected in the financial statements, and those are listed here. It was basically 3 items. An unreconciled difference between the accounts payable balance per the general ledger, the difference between that and the balance per the subsidiary ledger, and an offsetting misstatement similar to that was the difference between the recorded amount of accrued payroll-related expenses and the amount per the supporting schedules. And one item related to claims liabilities that was not recorded by year end. So these are items which management believes in the aggregate are not material to the financial statements, so they have not been reflected in those financial statements, but they've been disclosed here. Now, in addition to that, there were several items which were identified and which were corrected. That included certain misstatements that we identified through our audit procedures, as well as certain entries that were recorded as non-audit services. So these were things which the finance department was aware needed to be recorded in order to convert government-wide financial statements. So those were done under the supervision, an overview of the finance department as part of our audit engagement. We did not encounter any disagreements with management, and as is required by the auditing standards, we did receive a signed letter from management on February 2nd, 2016, which was the date of the issuance of the financial statements. As far as we know, management has not consulted with other accountants or auditors other than with the auditors who were engaged to perform the police pension and firefighters pension fund, which is included in these statements. So other than those items, we did not identify anything else, any other significant matters that would require communication in this letter.
Trustee Bridges.
The police and fire pension fund audit, that's what made us have to pay a penalty. And this is the second year in a row that we had this problem. I'm just asking you as the auditors, we can't ask them to perform the audit before time, but you cannot complete your audit without them? Is that what you're stating?
No, we can't issue a clean opinion without the completed audit done. I think there have been cases in prior years where it was the village decided to go ahead and issue the statements without those audits being completed, but the opinion was modified accordingly.
Okay, and the reconciliation, is it of your opinion that the accounts that we have, do they need to be further concise or broken down, or do we need, I don't know how many we have now, because at one time we had to spend a lot of money to reconcile our accounts. We had to spend money to break them down into less, I think we had 80 or something like that. Do you think, your opinion, that we still have a lot, or what we have is okay? So as far as the different accounts that we have.
What kind of account, you're referring to different accounts?
Yeah, different accounts in the village. I mean, it's...
Different expenditures?
Yes.
That are there. I mean, it seems that the accounts that are in place are pretty representative of the activities of the village, so we don't think it doesn't seem that there would be need to keep breaking them down into further sub-accounts.
And the last thing I wanted to ask you, as far as immediate checks, are you familiar with immediate checks? As far as having checks written with just the consensus of a few people, not with the board approval or the board voting.
As opposed to going through the board
process,
presentation.
right. What is your opinion on immediate checks? I mean,
I think in general, our opinion is always that everything go through the formal process. That would be the ideal recommendation, if that was,
Thank you.
if that was feasible.
Okay.
Just so we're clear, I mean, we talk about immediate checks, I mean, we still make payroll, we still make liabilities and things like that. We do that every single week. The board only meets every other week. So if they want to say that there's an immediate check, we're paying our payroll through, that's considered an immediate check, and it's getting approved the prior week. We do things like that. Just so that we're clear that, again, once everything's paid, we still bring before the board still approves the expenditures.
One last question, and you guys are auditors, so I mean, your accountability is up there. As far as paying anything from the village, yes, quite naturally payroll is payroll, that's due every month, we understand that. But when it comes to paying other things that are not part of payroll, that are not part of things that we have to pay each and every month, because that's an obligation that we know we have as payroll, and then bond payments and things, we understand that. But when you start paying personal things out of immediate checks, and you did answer the question that it should be at least paid for, but I do have this one question. Once it's been paid, I'm just asking you a professional opinion. Once it's been paid through immediate checks, can you take a vote to pay that payment after it's been paid? Is that is that something that it's called, well, it's labeled accounts payable, but accounts payable is something to be paid. That's what I understand.
I guess.
But once it's been paid, can you vote to pay that payment and it's already been paid?
You don't want inefficiencies in operations because maybe the board's not meeting this week or 2 weeks and it can't get paid. So it's okay that, obviously the best thing to do is to go through the normal process. But if there's operational inefficiencies or emergencies that happen all the time, out of course, or ordinary course of business, and the proper approvals are in place for, 2 signatures and things like that, it's okay that after the disbursement is done, the board sees what was dispersed to make sure they have an understanding of what went out the door, and that still is a good practice to do.
So it's okay to vote on money that has already been paid and label that as accounts payable?
Well, not for financial reporting purposes, you wouldn't put it as accounts payable, but I was interpreting what you were saying, that it's the board's fiduciary responsibility to look at all the disbursements that are going out the door, whether or not, it's getting paid the next day or got paid 2 days prior to them seeing it. Was that your question?
No, my question was, once it's been paid, once it's been,
If it's dispersed, it can't be in accounts payable per gap.
that's what I'm asking. That's the question I'm asking. Once it's been paid, it cannot be put in accounts payable because it's not accounts payable anymore.
For gap purposes, it's not accounts payable.
Thank you.
Trustee Myers.
Yes. On page 5, lower half,
On what letter?
this young lady here just went over. It's incorrect and corrected misstatements. I noticed that there wasn't that many, but there's still some here that could take some explaining. The fund balance, it's at 31. The total misstatement was 31,950. That's what we have here. Now, was that in multiple fund balance, or was it just in one balance?
The first schedule, there's a little bit of repetition here.
Okay.
So the first schedule is just the general fund. And so these were all identified, these were two misstatements identified in the general fund. Now, if you go to the next page, there was one additional one identified in one of the TIF funds. And this last table is really the combination of the first two. So the ones on the last one is just the government-wide
So it was placed in the wrong area somewhere? Or
No,
it was there, was it?
No, these three misstatements, the first two relate to certain issues in reconciling between what the balance should show and what it did show.
Okay.
That's the first two, the unreconciled differences between accounts payable, subsidiary ledger, and general ledger, and the overaccrual of payroll-related expenses. The next one is the same type thing. It's just in one of the TIF funds, but the nature of it is the same. And the third item you'll notice is only on the government-wide governmental activities. So this claims liability, this is not something that needed to be recorded in the general fund.
Okay.
It would only be recorded in the government-wide funds, which include the capital assets and the long-term liabilities.
Oh.
So this $15,000 item did not need to be recorded in any of the funds. So there's no misstatement related to
So
that on
that
an individual fund.
Threw you guys off a little bit until you found out where it was at.
Yeah, this was something that, was identified, it was an estimate, so it was identified, later on because the information was not available earlier on from what that amount would actually be. Because it required some input from outside parties, from outside counsel.
And the $44,993 on the expenditure, was that on multiple items too?
Yep. This is a combination of the two misstatements that were identified, as well as the reversing effect from the prior year. So if an expenditure was missed in 2014, now there's too much expenditure in 2015. So that's what that is, that $7,500 is representing. So all three items together, the 45 is the net.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Tate.
It was kind of alluded to earlier about Sauk Village being delinquent, I guess, in providing the information that's needed for you to conduct a thorough audit. And we've been apprised, thanks to the finance director. He did tell us things were going to be late and that kind of thing. What are better practices that we can adopt to ensure that you have the information that you need at the time that you need it to complete the audit in a more timely fashion? Because when it's not completed, or for us, when it's not completed in a timely fashion, it costs the village for delinquencies. So to avoid that extra expense, best practices or recommendations on what we can do to be more efficient.
I think a good starting point is the letter which Susan presented, which we didn't go through in a lot of detail, but that has quite a healthy list of recommendations, you know, we make where if these are in place from month to month, it takes the burden off the year-end process. It makes it less time-consuming at the end of the year to reconcile all the accounts.
The second question is kind of different. I think it's being misinterpreted what's happening in Sauk Village as regards to immediate checks. Payroll is an ongoing activity. Utilities are ongoing activities, they're not emergencies. So, in my opinion only, there should not be an immediate check because you know it's coming. So why are you issuing an immediate check? So it should be programmed in. And there are certain activities that go throughout the management of any organization that are ongoing. You know that it's going to happen. Payroll is one of them. Benefits for employees is another one. You know those are going to happen, so why the necessity for an immediate check?
We might not understand the complete process for the immediate check, but I know in other clients or entities, like if it's payroll, there's like a pre-approval amount of payroll because typically payroll is about the same amount every week or every 2 weeks or every month, depending on how the cycle works. So if you have a pre-approval of that payroll and then for some reason it comes in a little bit higher or lower, you have that back-end check that the board or whoever the committee is in charge of reviewing it sees that, you know, what was pre-approved versus what was actually dispersed is within a reasonable range.
Okay, and that would be okay. If you pre-approve, let's use that term, $50,000 for payroll, and it turns out to be $55,000, then you're approving only the $5,000 of it. You're not an immediate check for the whole $55,000. You understand what I'm saying?
You know, I don't want to speak on something I don't exactly know the full
Okay.
process, so I don't know, Mayor, you want to chime in on that?
No, that's okay. Thank you very much.
He's not going to agree anyway, so. Anyone else? All right. Do you have anything else to cover on this?
Oh, no,
All right.
you know.
Yes, these are for yours to keep. You can write, you can highlight them, you can do whatever you want. So, all right, thank you very much. All right, item number 4. Review agreement for maintenance on streets and highways by municipalities, municipal under Illinois Highway Code and municipal maintenance expenditure statement. Everyone should have had. Got my stuff here. What you have before you tonight is a supplemental resolution. And probably the easiest way to explain this is a supplemental resolution for $25,000 for motor fuel tax. This is cleaning up the records, I guess, if you want to say. What we've done is earlier in the year, we passed a resolution for $150,000. And then either on the back page or connected to it should show you how that $150,000 should have broke down. Well, now here we are at the end of the year. We know exactly what we spent when it came to all the MFT funds. The amount was over what we projected it was going to be. So this is a resolution, a supplemental resolution for additional $25,000, so that when the state gets it, they'll see that we have $150,000 and we have a supplemental $25,000, and we spent approximately $170,000. So when it comes to getting paid for these MFT funds, we can get the funds. So it's just, this is an addition, the $25,000 is an addition to the $150,000 that was passed earlier back in 2015. Is there any questions on this one? If you have any questions, you can just let us know and we'll get additional information. But this will be on for the agenda to pass on Tuesday. All right. Item number 5, review revised public comment ordinance.
Mayor, is Trustee Williams on the phone?
Yes, she is.
Oh, okay.
Trustee Williams, are you still on? Yeah.
You didn't fall asleep on us, did you?
She's right there.
Yeah. All right, everyone got the revised ordinance?
I had some questions. Can you hear me? Okay. We received a presentation from you and Trustee Myers last meeting, and both of you kind of indicated that you had reviewed the public comment piece, and it had gone to the attorney, and you had presented back to the board the best that you guys could come up with as a committee. Am I saying that correctly?
What I think we said was that the ordinance review committee, which is sometimes about here, they review the ordinance and that's what they presented. And then it was discussed that we just vote on it to see what happens, and then now we're back with this.
Okay.
I swear. All right, so Trustee Myers, you have the revised one? You're gonna pass out?
Trustee Williams, I'm passing out the ordinance on the ordinance committee.
Okay.
Trustee Myers, the first one is the one from your committee, correct? This first document that you passed around, that's the one from your committee, correct? And the second one is the draft from Trustee Burgess, correct? Okay. So, what is the procedure going to be? We aren't going to have both of these up for vote. So what is the procedure going to be?
Well, meeting, I said my committee is pretty much so deadlocked on what they have, and I recommend, along with you, I believe, that we bring it back to the committee here tonight and discuss it and see where we can come to a happy medium and get this thing back to the board for a vote. And I think we can. All we have to do is go through it a little bit and see what we can come up with. But at the end of the meeting last week, Mayor asked me, and I said, we're deadlocked. And I believe you asked, well, let's take a vote. And I don't want to recite the minutes here, but I think the attorney says we couldn't do it. But then at that time, we asked if it could be put on the agenda for tonight. And we're here tonight to try to get it somewhere, some happy solution where we can move on.
I don't, and as you may recall, I kind of objected to being placed back on the agenda tonight, since you guys had already done the best that you could possibly do with this ordinance, and it still did not reflect those things that were in Trustee Burgess's. So I don't think us wasting more time here tonight trying to decide how we're going to massage this and make these two documents into one document so that it could go on the agenda to be voted on. And this is to the board. My opinion is, since the committee of Trustee Williams and Trustee Myers have already looked at this thing. They've massaged it as best they could. It still does not reflect what Trustee Burgess had originally submitted. I don't think we need to waste time discussing this anymore. Simply put things to a vote. And I think both of these, since the attorney said we could not vote on the second one because it was not on the agenda, then both of these should be placed on the agenda and resolve it through the vote rather than to waste our time discussing this back and forth. And we've been doing this for 6, 7 months now.
Yes, sir.
So I think it's time to get out the pot and vote on this thing. So put both of these on the agenda and vote for them.
Well, first of all, we're at a committee meeting, so this is where you're supposed to discuss this stuff. So just, I think there's some things, and again, I looked at the one Trustee Burgess put out. Number one, there's some things on there that are not according to state statute. And see, I don't have a problem with the 3 minutes. I don't have a problem with any of that. But when it talks about, especially in section 2.80, says if you read down 3 minutes at regular board meeting, committee meetings, or any special meetings, by state statute, special meetings are by agenda items only. You cannot open it up to the floor for anything during a special meeting. And you've received the information from the attorneys to that on that behalf. Nothing on a special agenda can be changed. Special agendas have to be followed. And if you do open it up to comment, there has to be questions on those items only. So that right there doesn't follow state statute. The other thing is, if you go down to section number 3, the statements that you have, again, does not follow state statute. Section number 3 says corporate authorities will answer questions from the public. We've all taken the training. We all know that the state statute says you have to give the public the opportunity to speak, the time for asking questions, the time for making comments. However, state statute always makes it very clear that those questions do not have to be answered. In fact, most of us taking the training we received advises that you're very careful in your answers. If you don't know the answers, especially you don't answer those questions. Then also, again, you turn around and you talk about, the next sentence says, the appropriate village personnel will be consulted to answer questions in its full and complete manner as possible. Again, supersedes state statute. State statute says you only have to give the opportunity for the public to speak and ask questions. Nowhere in state statute does it require for those answers to be given. But the way you have this here written, you say will, and we all know what will means. Means it has to be. It's a must. So section 3 supersedes state statute completely. So I don't have a problem with the minutes. I don't have problems with the content. You know, I'm just looking at the stuff that you've superseded state statute, and this stuff can happen again. Again, when you read section, I think it's at section 5. I have my copy in the office. Says in section 5, ordinance 11-24 is hereby repealed in its entirety, other than ordinances in conflict hereby repealed to extent of such conflict. The way you have this written, you're passing something that's automatically going to be repealed because it supersedes state statute. So.
Question.
Trustee Jones.
Regardless of anything, before we vote on anything, it's still going to have to go back through the committee, though.
Yeah, that's why we're here tonight, to look through this and see what we can take from both of these to go back to the committee, and they can put it into one form. So that's why we have the Ordinance Review Committee. Trustee?
Yes, I do have a question with what was put in for this new ordinance, section 280, public addressing the board. I have a problem with if an individual fails to yield the floor after the expiration of the allotted time, otherwise acts unruly, who determines unruly, uses any racial or otherwise discriminatory comments, who decides that, or shows disrespect for the mayor, in whose opinion, or any board member, the mayor may direct the chief of police which means the chief of police has to be at every meeting, or his designee, to have the individual removed from the meeting. I would not subscribe to a martial state. I would not subscribe to the chief of police or any other law enforcement escorting someone out because of their opinion. If they have an opinion, that's what it's for. But to tell a person or to escort a person away, you can do like everyone else does. You can say, okay, thank you very much, your time is up, and give that person the opportunity to stop. If not, then, but to have them escorted out, now you're causing a problem, and you're starting something that I would not like to see happen here in the village, to have a martial state where the police or any person that's designated to escort a person out simply because of their opinion. But I also wanted to know who is going to make that decision that a person is unruly, because they can just say, wait a minute, you can say, okay, this is your second time, because I've heard that before. This is your second time, escort them out. That's not considered unruly, that's considered a person with an opinion. And as far as racial slurs, I have not heard racial slurs since I've been here. I mean, I know what racial slurs are. I grew up with racial slurs. But I have not heard someone call someone else out of that name in a racial tone. Not since I've been on this board. So that's what I'm asking. Who makes that determination what a racial slur is? So these are some of the things that I'm looking at, but I still...
let's cover these first.
Okay, go ahead.
You can cover that portion. You talk about the chief of police or designee to remove an individual from a meeting. I think when you look at this, and we don't have to say the chief of police, we can just say, again, I don't know how we can word it, but wherever you go where there's meetings, you go in Springfield, they have, what are they called? The Sergeant of Arms. In fact, I was down in Springfield, they got multiple Sergeants of Arms. They're up in they're in the rotundum, they're at the doors, they're upstairs in the seating area. And their job is while Congress and Senate and the House is having their meetings to make sure that no one interrupts. And if they're down there on the floor doing something, all of a sudden someone stands up and starts yelling and screaming, believe me, they've got 3 or 4 Sergeant of Arms going over and escorting those people out of the chambers, okay? So, when we talk about keeping order and decorum sometimes requires to have someone as your designee to remove someone who's out of order, okay? When you talk about unruly, again, it's the mayor's responsibility to keep order and decorum. I understand that, keeping the meeting moving along. But when you talk about someone unruly, we know that an individual has 3 minutes to come to say whatever they want. And we've never removed anyone while they were within their 3 minutes. Okay. So after they've been passed, and again, I think we've been trying to be pretty fair, telling your time is up, and maybe even counting to 3 sometimes. I feel like I'm with my children. I give my children to 3. So if someone is refusing to leave the podium and they are not allowing other residents to come and speak their opinion, they're out of order. So I would ask the trustees, if someone's out of order, if you don't have someone here to remove them, if we don't call them the police, if we don't have a sergeant of arms, if we don't have someone, what do you recommend to have in place to remove someone who is out of order?
Mayor, we discussed that before, and you have removed someone that's talked over 2-3 minutes and had them escorted out, but we've talked about that.
Past 3 minutes. No, we've never.
Past 3 minutes.
We've never removed anyone within their time.
No, not within time,
Okay.
but after the 3 minutes, they were removed. But we did talk about if it becomes to that point where it becomes unruly, that we call for a recess. We talked about that. And that's what we called for, that we would take a short recess if it got unruly for 5 minutes, calm things down and go back.
And we've seen how that has happened, where we've called for a recess before, and what had happened at the podium ended up getting into the audience, and we ended up having people go around the corner trying to attack people during a recess. So if you don't stop it, it's going to escalate, and it's going to continue, and there's going to be more people. What happens is you have someone at the podium, you have one individual. Nothing worse to go into a recess and you have multiple individuals, because people have their own opinions. And most people are law-abiding citizens. They will sit there and not say anything. But every once in a while you may have an individual who comes up and is out of order. There's no reason why you should escalate the issue and cause additional problems inside the audience by recessing, because all you're going to do is the person at the podium is going to continue yelling and screaming, and then you're going to have audience that's going to get involved because we're no longer inside a meeting, we're recessed. Yes, Trustee.
Just about that section, there's a couple comments I wanted to make. Number one, I think that the first part of that section is a good compromise. We've been going back and forth about 3 minutes versus 5 minutes, and any topic versus just the agenda item. And I think that going with the 3 minutes on any topic for every meeting except for a special meeting agenda, I think that's a good compromise. So I'm hoping that that's something that is
So I guess the question is, if we remove the chief of police or we say police department designee, because that's the only person you're going to ask to come in and remove someone. You're not going to ask anyone from the audience. You're not going to ask anyone from the board. If we just say a police department designee.
I have a problem with, like I said, the first part of it. Who makes the determination that someone is, you know?
So you bring a good point up. I guess the question is, if the wording is changed to if they become out of order or extend their time at the podium, is that something you're looking for? Or refuses to yield the floor after their time is up?
Okay. I would like to see from if any individual fails to yield the floor all the way down to the individual be removed from the meeting. If we can take that part out, I have no problem with everything else that's on here. Because it's basically, like you said, the agenda items only during special meetings, okay? I have no problem with that. But I just have a problem, and I've always had a problem, and Trustee Williams remembers back in the day when we did call the police on the other side for residents, and we had a problem with that, calling the police on the residents when we were had meetings in the old village hall. I never liked that part. I have no problem with calling a recess. That happened one time, okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen every time. But I do have a problem with calling the police on our residents because they're talking. We can take a recess or something else, some other alternative method than to basically seek the authorities on a resident who just happens to go over or becomes boisterous and keeps on talking, and then to enact martial law. I don't see that on our residents. I would like to see that. So,
but how do you remove someone from a podium?
If they, as I said before, if they get unruly and they don't want to leave the podium, you ask them, then we just call for a recess. Now
so I guess the question is, you go to recess,
okay,
and then hopefully you don't have a problem in the audience. But when you come back from recess, if that person's still standing there and refuses to leave, what do you do?
Well,
what do you think a recess
I see what you're saying, but if that person is still standing there, I'm hoping, just like right now, you ask well, we don't ask, but in a lot of meetings, they ask people to turn their phones off, silence, put their phones on silence. If they don't do that and their phone rings, I'm not going to call the police on them and tell them, because that's something that we ask you not to do.
We don't have an ordinance that
I know we don't, but I'm just saying.
We do have an ordinance that says they have a certain amount of time to speak.
Yes.
And they can speak, according to this, on any topic they want at any board meeting except for special meetings. The question is, what do you do at the podium? You go to recess, you come back, they're still standing there saying, I'm going to have my say no matter what, and there's nothing you can do about it because you can't do anything by ordinance. What are you going to do to remove that individual?
I've never seen that happen, but
I have.
I have never seen a person after recess still standing at the podium.
I've seen during recess fights start happening.
Well, you're saying that's one time
because you remove the emphasis on one individual to multiple.
This is just my opinion, Mayor. I just never seen someone after recess come back and still stand at that podium like that.
I have.
Okay, well, it must have been a meeting I wasn't at.
Trustee Myers.
All right. Unfortunately, I have a personal comment. Where they directed to me or to any member, I take offense to it, because I am a board member, you guys are a board member. So any type of racial comments to any board member up there, I take personal offense, because we're all board members, all right? But I have heard comments. Matter of fact, I've had people stand up here threaten. You guys better watch yourself, or you could come up missing.
Really?
Maybe that. This is all recent.
Okay.
Let me finish. Then I've also had unruly people that. A matter of a few weeks ago, we had a resident run around through the entire audience here, and I hate to say this, our police chief was chasing the person. But anyway, that shouldn't happen. This is a meeting. This is a meeting that we need to work together on this. Is a meeting we need to get
Trustee
under
Meyer,
control.
when did you see somebody running around and the police chief had a chase? What meeting was that?
About 3 weeks ago, when Mr. Mayor, am I allowed to use names or?
I would.
Okay. There is a team that the resident was in the back. The chief of police went to discuss with his residents to settle down. The residents came up over here in the far corner. You looked directly at them, right over here about the corner. And then she ran back to the back, and then.
Oh, okay, now I see, okay, you just said ran around, okay, now I understand what you're talking about. Yeah, the resident did come up here and state that we're going back and forth, and why can't they, okay, I saw that.
Let me finish real quick here, and then maybe we can do something with this. All right, so you said that you don't have a problem if the use of racial or otherwise discriminatory remarks or comment or show a disrespect to the mayor or a board member. You want all that restricted?
Right, from all the way down to me.
Trustee, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
We got something coming down the line here, and I know you guys are all involved in it, but one day you're going to be sitting running this meeting, and there's somebody that's going to get up there and they're going to really start arguing with you, and you're going to let them just totally annihilate you and discriminate you. I'm not discriminating, I'm sorry. To really badger you to a point where it's not right. You are, when you sit in that chair, you're the chair, okay, and you govern over your meeting. And if the person gets, I'm not saying if the person gets loud, because there's times that I get loud to get opinion across. Sometimes we all get loud to get our opinion across, but that's our right. We have a right to come here. I have no problem having open comments in both meetings, except for the special, and a certain news reported contacted this Attorney General on it, and we had an order come down. We cannot do that, and you only have to stay on agenda items. We all know that now. But to get back to the meeting, so what, you want maybe the entire board, mayor and the board, decide if the person is unruly? Or that seemed like that's where we get the hold up at.
Well, Trustee, I just wanted to say something, and it has happened to me. I have had meetings where I had a person came in and made a statement and disrupted my meeting. All I did was ask the person, please, you know, because what you're doing is you're disrespecting each and every person that's out there.
That's exactly what you're doing.
And I've asked them to, and they came back and apologized that they did it. I didn't escort, didn't put them out. I mean, it's how you talk and treat a person.
Maybe so.
But to make this a statement that all you have to do is point, and then, you know.
We already read the statement 2 or 3 times. My question to you is that if that sentence disappears and what stays, how can we move on with this?
How about if we change it to this? If an individual fails to yield the floor after the expiration of their allotted time, the mayor may direct a police department designee to have the individual removed from the meeting. You remove all the racial, the unruly part. You just say, you know what, after their allotted time. That's what they're allotted according to this ordinance right here. They've got 3 minutes to speak on anything they want. If after that, if they refuse to yield the floor, then it gives us the opportunity to have the person removed.
Mayor, I just want to, and trustee, I just want to say, I'm just one trustee, and it's just my opinion. There's four other trustees that are here, 3 present and 1 that's on the phone. That's just my opinion. If the mayor, if you guys feel that the mayor can do that and say, okay, because I've heard him say that that's your second time, and
after asking them to, after their timing's been allowed.
No, it's not their time. It was just they were saying something. You just said that's their second time, and
after their time was allotted.
No, they weren't even at the podium. They weren't at the podium. They were sitting down, and you told them that, and I guess they said something.
Well, this here doesn't talk about the audience. This is talking
This-
about,
right,
this is talking about the person at the podium.
At the podium, because I've never seen, I've seen people escorted from the podium that was that went over the time, but some of that could have been avoided because one person was 70-some years old, and it takes you a little longer to talk when you're 70-some years old if you can remember everything you say, because a lot of times I can't remember everything. I may be in the thought and then forget that too, so I kind of look at if a person's that old, I give them a benefit of the doubt because, first of all, they're not going to talk that long. Because, you're that age, you're not going to talk that long. But I hate to see something in our ordinance that states that we use our police or designee to escort a person from the podium. That's the part I have a problem with.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Trustee. Trustee?
I look at this portion of it kind of like insurance. Okay, I hope that we, from this point forward, after this is ironed out and we have a decision made, I hope that we never have to invoke this portion. I hope that it's something that, the decorum will come back to the board meeting on both sides of the podium, as far as the board and the audience. But this is something that we have, that I think needs to be in there, because we need to have something in there just in case. We've seen, and again, maybe it's a difference of opinion, but
think we've come to some things where I think everyone was agreed about 3 minutes. I think everyone has agreed, if I remember right, about any topic. Okay. Sorry. So you're not agreed to 3 minutes. But we're any topic at any meeting, right? Except for special meetings. Special meetings are stuck to, by state statute, agenda items only. Again, and removing that middle part right there, I can't, I'm so scratched out I can't read it, but talks about unruly, removing that, talking about racial, talking about comments against that disrespects the mayor, removing that portion, talks about disrespects against trustees, removing that. So if anyone comes up and disrespects you, the chair is going to allow them to talk and go after you, because we don't have it in here, just so we know. But I think we still need to have something that enforces, which we said, I think I stated earlier, leaving that portion there, it says the mayor may, if an individual fails to yield the floor after the at the expiration of their allotted time, and the mayor may direct the police department designee to have the individual removed from the police department, removed from the meeting. And I don't think anyone, I think I try to be very fair, especially with the older ones coming up. You talked about the 70-some-year-old. You know, a lot of times I let them talk. And the village clerk is sitting next to me saying, 3 minutes is up. And so I'll let them try to finish what they're saying, then I'll say, okay, your time is up. And a lot of times they go up and they start saying something again, I say, your time is up. And a lot of times if you go back and look at it, I more or less apologize to them and say, I'm sorry, but your time is up, and we're going to have to move on. And I tell them they come talk to me after the meeting if they have something else going on. So their 3 minutes, they've gone over and above their 3 minutes. And I try to be very, doesn't matter who it is at the podium, I try to let people go to finish their statements. But it gets to a point where, okay, we have to stop. It's time for the next person. We still have an issue that if a person refuses to leave, that's why this is here. If a person refuses to leave, just like the meeting last week, a person came all the way up here and started yelling and screaming and causing a scene in the middle of a meeting. So, you know, without that, something in place, it allows us to be able to say, okay, we're not talking about arresting anyone. We are removing a situation from this room and having him go out. You know, please step out. And I think that, like Trustee Williams said, I mean, the chief back there, he's very soft-mannered guy, soft-mannered. And he has that type of person he can walk up and say, you know, please. And that's what we need. We need someone like that. I'm not looking at anyone to put someone in cuffs and arrest them. We're not looking at that here. We're looking to make sure we can continue to keep order and decorum. And by doing that, it's stopping it with one individual rather than having to call the police in because we have multiple individuals. So it's very difficult to look this way. I'm not laughing at you. We've got an individual that's acting childish behind you. So, but I think we need to make sure we keep that in there. Now, I guess the question is, what does the board feel about the comment portion of the meeting will not exceed 1 hour unless the majority of the board agrees to extend the time? It says the public comment portion of the meeting will not exceed 1 hour unless a majority of the board agrees to extend the time limit. Does anyone have a problem with that one? Okay. And then the only other thing I have, and we can go and see if you have anything else, is section number 3, again, is totally against state statute. Section number 3 says the corporate authorities will answer questions from the public. That is totally against state statute. And again, we've all had the training. We just came back from IML a couple months ago, which we took this training at IML. That state statute says that the municipality has to give the opportunity for someone to speak and ask questions. But nowhere in the state statute does it say it's enforcing that questions have to be answered.
What if a corporate board member can answer that question? Will you yield to that board member that can they ask you a question? If they come up here and ask you a question about the ordinance committee, if they ask you a question about finance committee, will you allow that person to answer, or can you direct them or give that person a chance to say, okay, after the meeting, whoever the trustee is, after the meeting, I get back with you?
I think there's two things you can do. If the question is coming toward a standing committee, as a chair, I have no problem saying that question goes to Trustee Burgess for public
You
works.
don't even know, it's public works. Okay.
I want to, so I have no problem saying that question, Trustee Burgess, would you like to answer that question? If something comes down for Parks and Recs, Trustee Jones, that's yours. You know, Neighborhood Watch, I'm not going to answer your questions. They're your standing committees. That is where I don't have a problem doing that, passing it off. So, I mean, when you look at Section 3, corporate authorities will allow an opportunity for individuals to ask questions and make comments. That's probably not word for word from state statute, but that's pretty close. Says that during the meetings, we allow the public to ask questions and make comments. But there's nowhere that forces that you have to answer a question. The way it's worded, someone can ask a question, which they've done in the past, on something that happened in 2012 and expect an answer. There's no way we're going to remember what happened in 2012. No, I think the corporate authorities will allow the audience to ask questions, or will take questions and comments from the public.
That's section 2.
That's section, is that right in section 2?
That's section 2.
Okay.
Are you looking to remove section 3?
Well, the way it's worded, it supersedes state statute.
You're talking about my section 3 or the section 3
And
that was
both.
presented?
I'm looking at the new one too.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they changed your section. It's probably almost the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
But I agree with what you're saying, and you're in the same line of questions. They're not required that they're answered. So I guess, would it be most appropriate to just remove this section entirely? Or how would you even amend it to say, I mean, because like, section 2 kind of covers the public's ability.
Right.
If you remove section 3, then there's why am I standing at the podium asking questions?
I can tell you that, number one, by state statute, we have to give the opportunity for individuals to ask questions and make comments.
But you just removed the part that states that the corporate authorities will answer questions from the public in a timely manner. Timely manner doesn't necessarily mean right then and there they can get back to that person.
Again, timely manner. Define timely manner.
Between now and the next meeting?
It doesn't say that.
Okay. No, it doesn't.
No. And again, it's getting back to the point where will is a word that means you're required.
Okay, what about...
You've got will and shall, and then you have should and would.
What's wrong with may? What's wrong with may be considered? Can we put that in there?
May answer questions from the audience?
May be consulted to answer questions to the best of their ability.
So the corporate authorities may answer questions. I haven't got a problem with the word may. That's not a required. In fact, that might be the word they use in state statute, may. So if we remove will to may, corporate authorities may answer questions from the public in a timely manner as possible when questions are asked at meetings or submitted in writing. The appropriate village personnel may be consulted, again,
May be consulted.
may be consulted to answer questions to the best of their abilities.
I have no problem with that.
I don't have a problem with the word may. That's a good question. No, that's why it's a good question. Corporate authorities may answer questions from the public in as timely a manner. Again, may is not required. So the word may, they may answer them in a timely manner. It's not that they have to, it's not that they will, it's not that they shall, it says they may. Don't have a problem with those, changing those two words from will to may? I know you have a problem. Anyone else? I heard Trustee Williams say something. Okay. Is there any other questions or any other things on this?
Well, yeah, the one, we still haven't finished from if the meeting, are we going to take that out?
If the meeting.
From if, I'm sorry, from that sentence. If an individual fails to yield the floor after the expiration of their allotted time, otherwise acts unruly, uses, right, all that. I would like to take that out and just go from addressing the board to the public comment portion of the meeting will not exceed 1 hour unless the majority of the board agrees.
I've got no problem removing from otherwise all the way up to, again, I think the way I have it is, and someone can speak up, I have if an individual fails to yield the floor after the expiration of their allotted time, the mayor may direct a police department designee to have the individual removed from the meeting. Then it goes right into the next one. The public comment portion of the meeting will not exceed 1 hour unless a majority of the board agrees to extend the time limit.
I still have a problem with, because, I mean, you do, and Trustee Williams, you remember too, we had a problem with the police department always being at our meetings back when we were on the other side. Even here, the police department, that shows to me that's like, you know, you're intimidating. You got the police here, so, you know, that causes the same amount of problem as it would for anything else. That could cause someone to get upset. I mean, why can't we not handle this as adults, as mature people? Yes, there's always an if and a but to every rule. Yes, it is. But to have that presence at every time we meet, that we have a police presence here, that we cannot handle this ourselves, shows that there's a problem.
I don't think it says that you have to have a police officer present. I think what it says is it gives the option for the mayor to direct. That means you may have to call for the police department to send someone over here. That's not saying that it's going to happen, but it's in the ordinance that if anything does happen, if someone fails to yield the floor, if we have to, it gives the opportunity for the mayor or anyone to pick up the phone, one of the trustees, pick up the phone and call the police department and say, we need a police officer to come over here.
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee, go ahead. Williams.
I think that it's also important to see that this ordinance is neat. I don't know if the chief talked to you there tonight, but I know that he generally does come to most of the board meetings. And I know that also so does the village administrator. And I think that we have seen it sometimes the village administrator be the one to make that phone call, or if the chief was not present at the meeting, I'm sure he would be one that would be directed to approach that individual. But what I understand because of Burgess' concern, what I've made counter with as a compromise is instead of being removed from the meeting, changing the meeting to podium. If we're taking out the part where we're talking about being unruly and racial or whatever, and our main focus is that they have to yield the floor.
So you're removing the word medium, the meeting, to change it to podium? So it would say if
We're asking the person to not be removed from the meeting, like not taken off the hallway, but that whoever, whether it's the chief or the village administrator or, you know, whoever, they would be able to approach that person and privately, you know, ask them, because I'm sure that at this point, the mayor has already, or the chair has already stated, you know, I'm sorry, ma'am, sir, you usually should have another time, you know, one time, two times, however, and the third time, this person walks up and they will be able to privately discuss with this person about yielding the podium and returning to their seat, not necessarily, you know, pulling them out to the hallway and telling them they can't be part of the meeting, just within the sheet before.
I got no problem with that. Remove from the podium.
Can I ask also, maybe, where it says the mayor may direct the police department designee, maybe add the mayor may call a recess or direct, depending on the situation. I mean, it's not always a need to have somebody removed. It may just be a matter of, it might be even worse, but or a recess is required. So if you put an or in there that takes care of just emergencies, can't we just call a recess?
I wouldn't have no problem with just a recess.
Well, I mean, it could be both, and we never know. What we're trying to do is compromise. So it's an either-or situation depending on how the board wants to handle it.
So the mayor may call a recess or direct a police department designee to have the individual removed from the podium.
But that's the same thing, though.
Oh, no, podium is you go back to your seat, removed from the meeting means you take them out in the
No,
hallway.
I'm talking about, I'm talking about as far as using the police. That's still the same thing. You may feel that this warranted calling the police to have the person removed. That's the part I have a problem with, calling the police or a police designee to do anything because a person is asking a question at that podium. I would rather say let's call for a recess. I just want to give the residents the benefit of the doubt that we don't always have to call someone other than ourselves to gain control. I mean, you know, we're looking at bringing the police in or bringing a person that has that authority to do that every time a person or we feel a person is being unruly just because they're talking over 3 minutes or whatever to call the police or the designee or whoever it is to escort them from that podium. Yes, I have a problem with that.
Trustee Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've sat here and I've listened to a lot of suggestions back and forth, but I do just want to say that I am in favor of whoever is chairing the meeting, and we're talking about this meeting that we have in the Rotunda, either the committee of the whole or the board meetings, which the mayor is the chair of. At this point, I do feel that the mayor should make the determination if he feels that there's something going on where we need to call for the police or a sergeant at arms to remove someone that's being out of order, that's talking past their 3-minute limit, or doing anything that could be insightful to others that's around them during the meeting time. Whatever happened years ago in another building somewhere else, maybe it wasn't the kind of situations that occur currently that we experience now. People in the audience are very insightful and very disrespectful and will scream and holler and call you racial names, call you outside of your name, come out of their seat in the audience up to where we're sitting either in the diocese or around the table and call us names outside of our names. And I mean, I was always told before I became an elected official, if somebody threatened you or intimidated you or made you feel like you were being harassed, and it was really a serious situation, that you could call the police and ask them to remove them from around you. In this situation, in Sauk Village, during our meetings, we have residents that come and get in the mayor's face, in the trustee's face, call us bobbleheads to our face, call the mayor an a-hole, and anything else they want to say. Whatever the mayor says or asks, they tell him to his face, I'm not gonna do it. Just belligerent, mean, evil, obnoxious, and rude, to put it lightly. And we have some measures that require stiffer rules. If you have children in your house and you give them a curfew and they tell you, I'm not coming back until 10, and you say, I told you to be here at 8. And when they come back at 11, they cuss you out and slap you and kick you, and they're your children in your house, you're not gonna be like, well, Johnny, you're really gonna have a timeout for that. I mean, really. The things that people do and say, I know that I have taken the high road many times. And people think because you are an elected official that they can say whatever they want to say, do whatever they want to do, like you're not going to ever do anything or say nothing back. And nothing but you just being a person with integrity makes you not do it. I look on ignorant people and I overlook the ignorance that they display. Because evidently, if you don't know how to communicate and articulate in an intelligent manner, something is wrong with you. And if you can't stand in the meeting and stand up and let us know what you need us to know as a board and as a mayor to listen to what you have to say and for us to try to work it out together, then if you got to holler and scream and call people out their name and laugh and make all kind of insightful remarks in the audience towards us, the meetings weren't going to go anywhere. I had over 7 elected officials that called me in the month of January and February and told me, you know you are not going to get nothing. I said, what are you talking about? Y'all not getting no money in Sauk Village. I said, oh, we getting some money in Sauk Village. What are you talking about? They're like, you all are the laughing stock of the south suburbs. Everybody laughs at Sauk Village. We see your board meetings up on the YouTube, and it is ridiculous what goes on. I remember when Jesse Jackson Jr. came and stood right here and he said, nobody's gonna give you all no money. I'm not gonna give you all no money until this board can come together and work together. No companies wanna bring $1 million development out here and build someplace where the board cannot even get along. So to say that we don't need a sergeant at arms or somebody to come and say, excuse me, your time is up, or could you step away? That's not hurt nobody's feelings when they cussing you out and saying all kind of racial remarks to you, to ask them, okay, your time is up, do you mind moving now, or could you go now? I have seen the chief come, he walked to people, they're like, okay, they just start walking away. He's not mean, he's not rude, he's not obnoxious, he doesn't have handcuffs or a taser gun trying to kill nobody. You know, somebody say, your time is up, okay, your time is up, excuse me, your time is up. I'm not through, ma'am, your time is up, sir, your time is up. Your time is up, you want to keep talking, talk when the meeting is over. If you want to be treated intellectually, act intellectual, and people will treat you like that. And I just want to say that whoever's sharing the meeting should keep the decorum of the room. I have been over many committees. I sit on many committees and boards. As a union president, I have people that get upset because they cannot get their retro pay. They still making what they made 2 years ago. We cannot do nothing without the arbitrator. They upset, they're mad, they have no health care, but we have a sergeant at arms that will go over and say, you all got to get in line, your time is up. It's just keeping order. It's not trying to insult you. It's just trying to get a job done so that we can continue with conducting the business at hand. And whatever you want to say, we're all here when it's over, when the lights are off, we're all still here. Everybody up here has a committee. I can go to these committee meetings, there's 2 people there, 3 people there. Where are all the people that have all these questions to come talk to you at your committee meeting? Neighborhood Watch, we have meeting ordinance, everybody has a committee meeting. You could talk to us on the phone, we all have phones at our cubicles. We're all in our committee meetings all week long, and we're here every single week. What you can't say in 3 minutes, nobody's not stopping you from talking to the mayor or any of us. So I wish that we could have more respect and be more adult to one another. It makes no sense for people to sit in the audience and just say words that they feel like they need to say about whoever, because if people turn around and say those same words back to you, we're supposed to set the bar. And you all make it hard sometimes for us to do that as trustees and as the mayor, because the things that people do and say to me about was not an elected official. But I think that it is the person that sits in the chair of whatever meeting that you go out, that you all chair your meetings, and somebody come in your meeting and just acting belligerent and loud and won't listen to you and cussing and going all over. You try to conduct your individual committee meetings as the chair of wherever you are. It's your job to keep the decorum in the room. It's nothing wrong with having a sergeant at arms. It's nothing wrong with having, whether it's the police, if he's going to be here anyway. If he's not going to be here, then if it's going to be the village administrator or whoever's going to be. But the biggest thing is to be intelligent and respect everybody in the room and know when your 3 minutes is up, please go have a seat. And however you feel about any of us, it's okay, because we all feel certain ways about people. But just keep it to yourself. We don't want to hear your personal opinion about us. I know I don't, because you don't want to hear mine about you. Whoever sits in that chair should be respected. And it just shows me when people can't show a respect, the chair should respect, and people should respect the chair. The trustees should respect the residents, and the residents should respect your trustees. You elected us to these seats. Election is coming up. We all know it's coming up. So if you don't like it, get in the race. That concludes my statement. You're welcome. And Mayor, I'm sorry. I didn't want to say also, I wanted to say that when we're meeting, I have heard residents say, and the elected officials, they talk too long and they ramble, they go on and on and on. And I've heard you say, even before I became a trustee, that's what these meetings are for, so that we can talk and hash stuff out and throw it out there and get it all worked out until we can get it together, because we can't meet nowhere. If 2 or 3 of us meet, we're violating the Open Meeting Act. So this is the only place where we can talk about it and hash it all out. But the beauty of being a resident is at any time, you can get up and walk out the door and go home. You don't have to listen no more. Watch it on YouTube tonight. Nobody's making you stay. Go. We have to stay. Leave us alone and let us run the village that you elected us to do. Now that concludes my statement.
All right. Do we have anything else in this that anyone has? Trustee Jones.
Well, my only concern is it seems like we're trying to come up with something to protect the one that's in violation. we're not taking into consideration who's behind them, who wants to speak next. We need to figure out, I believe maybe we could go to recess, and if they still sitting there, then we could make a call, if we come to agreement with that.
That's why I suggested or, recess or.
Well, or leaves the option of, to have it as a process, you have to go to recess first and then second option.
Sorry, I guess that was me. I thought that was you. You know, I think that different circumstances will determine if a recess is required or if asking someone to come remove the individual from the podium is required. You know, if you've got, just real quick, if you have someone who is upset because of street light and say, I'm not going to leave this until you fix my street light, and they want to do a filibuster at the podium, okay? There's not a problem with saying, okay, we're going to go into a recess. Okay, we go away. But when you've got something that may be causing issues among the residents and the person at the podium, and you've got words going back and forth, your best thing to do is to remove the individual rather than leaving in a recess and allowing everyone to get up, and then it ends up becoming an issue. We just saw that a few months ago. We just saw where we went off in recess, the person was at the podium, and it literally had people swinging. I mean, it was over YouTube. And it went to the back of the room and started going around the side of the room. Then individuals are trying to stand in between everyone. That's what happens. And again, that's why I'm saying that either or, and the circumstances will determine on what's happening. And again, keeping order and decorum is very important. And that's why I don't have a problem adding that we add recess or have someone ask the person to remove from the podium. I think Trustee Williams, you had something? We didn't lose you, did we?
Trustee Williams?
Yeah. You basically said what I was going to say. I think that like the recess portion of it, I think that's for like extreme cases. If the person is not really pushing the podium, and then the audience members maybe assist in not really pushing the podium, or it gets a little more excessive, I think that's what a recess is for. But when it's just an individual and that they can be, spoken to appropriately by the designee and asked to relinquish their seat, and they stop the production of the meeting. So I have a problem with both of them being in there, but I think that like a recess should be kind of like a last resort. Same thing as with board members. I think that I've often asked for a recess just because board members are kind of going back and forth with each other. I think when it's not able to be stopped individually, then you take the recess. You have that cooling off moment. Everyone moving themselves, 5 minutes, come back, hopefully they got clear head. But I don't know that should be our go-to. So I agree that there should be, that option in there. But again, I don't want it to look to appear like we're forcibly removing people, throwing them out of the hallway, or throwing them out of the board meeting.
Right.
It's about the fact that everybody's held to the same standards. You've got your 3 minutes, you say what you have to say, and then at that point, you step back, you allow somebody else the opportunity to speak. The person, doesn't respect the other audience members enough to do that. And that's when, somebody steps in and asks that person individually, quietly, respectfully, when you have your time, I'm sure if you approach the mayor or whoever else you want to talk to after the board meeting, I'm sure they'll speak with you. But unfortunately, your time has been, your time has expired. It's somebody else's turn to move on. And I think that that's kind of how we should proceed with it. And I agree with the clerk's suggestion that both of them stay in there.
Does anyone else have anything else inside this?
So how are you going to rewrite this or do this? Because my thing is, this is an amendment, And I would like to see us do the first thing first. If it doesn't work, it's an amendment. We can also amend. That's what this is. We're amending the ordinance. So I'm just asking that we try with the recess first. And if that doesn't work, then we go, you know, come back here again and amend it. I mean, you can amend an ordinance as many times as you want. That's why they call it an amendment. So I was just asking, so that's just my opinion. So I'm just asking also, Mayor, or whoever's in charge of presenting this ordinance, are you going to present it that way, or who makes that determination and how we're going to present this ordinance for voting next week?
Well, I think we go around the table. I mean, we can look around the table. But again, in a way to keep order and decorum, I think there's been a lot of compromise here talking about things tonight, removing things and the wording. I think there's been compromise on both sides. But in order to keep order and decorum, it's no different than anywhere else you go. If you go down state, you go down to Springfield, you go down to Washington, out to Washington, there is someone there that's helping keep order and decorum. So, you know, I would push and I would ask that the board leaves in the part that says if an individual fails to yield the floor after the expiration of their allotted time, the mayor may call for a recess or direct a police department designee to have the individual removed from the podium. I got a couple shaking of heads. I don't know. I can't see Trustee Williams and Trustee Jones.
Well, it's still going through the committee review board anyway, correct?
We're going to send it back to them and have them review it.
It'll be wrote as you just read, sir, and presented to the board.
I can actually just retype this again and put it in the packets I write, and we can get this done.
Well,
I mean, you want me to read the changes that you've made and kind of...
well, we can put it together and we'll send it back to Ordinance
Put it all
Review
together
Committee
and everything.
and let the Ordinance Review Committee review it. And
They just
You,
said last week that...
you won't get a
I think here's what you have. I guess here's the question. When we send this back to the Ordinance Review Committee, we've got Trustee Burgess who has one thing, and we have what I just got done reading off, where Trustee Burgess only wants to put in there that the mayor may call for a recess. We send both statements back to the Ordinance Review Committee and have them come back with what they feel is best.
Mr. Mayor, we just went through, and they're both about mirror, all right? Except for the one point that Trustee Burgess just brought up. And that's the one item. Otherwise, they're almost exactly the same.
I know they are.
I don't know how it happened, but they're almost like the same.
I mean, if you're going to go back to the Ordinance Review Committee, you just had the two people that are on the Ordinance Review Committee.
You're not going to get back. If we meet the standard meeting, it's going to be next month. I can call a special meeting after, I can't guarantee I can get them all on board for Thursday night.
Or we can just make the changes and call for a vote at the next board meeting. Why don't we put...
But okay, you said you're going to let them make the changes. You've already heard from Trustee Trustee Myers and Trustee Williams both state that they want both things that you asked to have put in there. One being escorted out, and the other one being that call for a recess.
Right.
All I asked is to have that escorted out part taken out.
Well, we didn't say escort. We did remove escort. What we said was recess or direct a police department designee to have the individual removed from the podium.
Okay, that's still.
It's not escorting them out.
Well, I just personally don't like the police department removing anybody anywhere. It doesn't show good relations with the community that we have to use our police designee, or whoever the case may be, to escort a person from the podium.
Then who would remove?
Yeah.
Trustee Williams?
Is your only concern is that this is involving the police department?
Yes, it is. My concern is that we have to use our police because they can do better on the street than to be in here called to take a person away from the podium.
So who do we designate?
All I asked...
If the wording was changed to the mayor or designee
asked him to yield the podium. Very simple.
We removed the chief already.
There you go.
We would just put the mayor or his designee, but that would allow the mayor to do it, or if he's...
I'm not removing anyone.
Okay, you have a, you can use, he has a, where did he?
They won't listen to me the way it is. We think I'm going out and get removed.
Where did he go? But anyway, he is the public safety director also.
Yeah.
So if you want to use that person to ask them to leave or to come away from the podium, I wouldn't have a problem with that. If you have but I just don't want the police or a designee or any sergeant of arms or any private person to do that.
So then we change out police and we say the mayor may call for a recess or direct the public safety director to have an individual removed from the podium.
To ask the individual to.
Okay, someone's got to repeat what I just said because it's getting pretty late. The mayor may recess or direct the public safety director or have, how about if we say have the village administrator / public safety director ask the individual to remove from the podium?
Ask them, yes.
Okay, so have, I'm just gonna put JW, I know his title.
It's on tape though, isn't it?
May have public safety director ask the individual to remove themselves from the podium? I mean, what?
No, ask the individual to come away from, you know.
To yield. There you go. Thank you very much. To yield. Individual to yield. Holy cow. The podium. All right. So I have here the mayor may call for a recess or direct the public safety director to ask the individual to yield the podium.
Yes, to yield the podium, and if they don't, then we can go to a step further. The next step would be to ask the public safety director to, ask them to step down.
Okay, so I've got 3 heads yes already in here.
Is that a yes, trustee Gordon?
Trustee Jones? Trustee Tates? Okay. All right, I just want to make sure I asked everyone. All right, so you've got the wording. You guys can do the wording. Please type it up. Please, if you can get it in the boxes before Thursday, let's get it in so they can read it and make sure they've got the wording down like we talked about tonight. Make sure there's no misunderstandings. All right? So just real quick, and if I read my scribbly, if an individual fails to yield the floor after expiration of their allotted time, the mayor may call for a recess or have the public safety director ask the individual to yield the podium. All right? All right, we took care of section 3. Any other questions or comments on this? Oh.
So if we retype this, will this be on next week's agenda for?
Yes.
But it won't go on the consent.
No, not consent. No, we're taking out the words will and add may in both those. Let's move on before we change our mind. Public comment, which we just got talking about. All questions, comments must be directed to the mayor. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. All right. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to comment on topics of their choice. Each speaker will be allowed 1 opportunity to speak. Is that working?
Is it out?
Yep, all right.
Bernice Brewer on behalf of myself today. Since I have been singled out in this last conversation, I want to explain certain things to you. We come here to learn about environmental and financial issues that relate to our day-to-day living here in the village. Yet we have to sit here every week and listen to the mayor disrespect us, disrespect the trustees, and yet we're not supposed to say anything about it. Now, residents should have the same right that you guys are putting this ordinance together to remove us. We should ask you guys to be removed, because sometimes you sit up there and act like you out to recess. Now, let's be for real. Now, we get involved just like you guys do, so yeah, you need to start policing yourself. Now, anytime the police comes and whisper in my ear, tell me he's gonna remove me, believe me, I'm gonna walk around there and ask him to remove you. And that's my right. Now, if you guys have some objection to that, just let me know. Because every time you act like a 2-year-old, I'm going to walk around there and ask you guys to be removed. Because we're here for the business of the village. You guys are sitting up here playing. And especially you, Mr. Mayor, you will sit up here and call a resident a liar in a minute. And we sitting up here asking you questions, and you got, I don't know what cloud you on. So that's my personal opinion. So I only had 2 questions this evening. But February 9th, you indicated that the $4.8 million loan for Illinois EPA was reduced to about $825,000. Now, according to the auditor that just here, it was $650,000 that was forgiven back in April of 2015. You indicated to me, when I walked up to you, that this information would be on the website, yet it's not posted. I want to know when that information is going to be available to the public so we can see just what's going on with our money. $3.3 million was we had in April 2015, yet we only have $500,000. I'd like to know where the money is. We like to know analysis, of somebody give us analysis of what happened to the money. That means that we didn't pay too much water fund if we don't have any money. Why is it only $500,000 left in that fund? And yet we have fire hydrants not working, we have water main breaks that's not going on, and we got a loan we got still paying, and yet $3.3 million and we only have $500,000 left. Somebody owes us an explanation. The last question I want to ask, since I had to indulge in your trivial recess period there, on February 9th, you also indicated there was an Illinois state statute that justified keeping the village treasurer on board, even though the village treasurer has confessed to be a felon. And I want to know how, and that's rude when you do that. So, and however, at the intensive rate search, I can't find the Illinois state statute that you referred to. So can you please provide us with that Illinois state statute that provides for the taxpayer to pay a self-confessed felon to keep him on board? Can anybody explain that to me? And I also like to hear from the trustees why that has not been put on the board to vote on to get rid of this employee.
Your time is up. Okay? All righty.
And then I hit it from these people from the audience.
And your time is up. Okay? All righty. We're not going to talk about the village treasurer.
Oh my God.
And so, you know, we received word last Tuesday about the IEPA loan. So then we're looking at making sure that we have everything that we've been assured by IEPA. So the announcement that was made last Tuesday was based off the information that Mohan received. So they've given us the new numbers and things like that. So I don't have anything for you in writing. That's why we haven't posted it. We're just waiting for it for the posting. So which will come soon. But again, I thought we'd have the information by now, but we don't. So,
yeah.
All right.
No information is huge.
Judy Gast here. You know, listening to this, it's everything is said except what do the people want? You've canceled meetings over and over again, and we haven't been able to get a word in. So I'm going to bring it up the way I see it. Trustee Williams said that we don't need more than 3 minutes because of the way the people get up and how professional they were and what they did and how they did it, all that good stuff. I'm here to tell you that's not true. The professionalism and everything is only because we did our homework and we had each other say what they were going to say up here to make certain that we didn't go over our 3 minutes. It's unfair to stop somebody, and their age has nothing to do with it. When you take notes from meeting to meeting and, okay, questions from the audience are over with, I can't ask another question, so I mark it down. I'll get it next meeting. You can't get your questions in. You have multiple people, and sometimes I'm one of them. I say what I gotta say and I sit down. I don't need the 3 minutes. So why can't you use the 5 minutes, and if they don't need it, they sit down? You've had a lot of people come up here and use the microphone, say what they have to say, and sit down. And as far as the people getting up here and their time's up, there have been people up here that it was difficult to get them to move away. But Mr. Mayor, a majority of the time when you say the 3 minutes is up, we move away. Even your village clerk had a problem with the 3 minutes, had a problem with the agenda items only, and it created an issue. There's times when certain things come up that are important to us, we need to say them. And to tell us your time's up and we should stop what we're saying in the middle of the sentence and go sit down like we're a little kid. And I think it's unfair. And I know my 3 minutes isn't up yet, but I'm done.
Good evening. Marv Campbell Pruitt. I'm here to tell you that my mother died a couple of months ago. And it really hurt my heart. And the reason why it hurt even more so is because I had family members from out of town who wanted to come naturally, and they came to my home to visit, and I was really, really embarrassed to have my relatives come to my house during my mother's death simply because my front entryway is so horrendous. We've been talking for 2 years about that front entryway. We've communicated personally, we've communicated through email, I've communicated with your administrator, I've communicated with Public Works Director. You guys have made promises for 2 years, and it still has not been done. So I'm standing before you now simply to ask that when you start your workflow plan for the spring, please let Lincoln Meadows be #1 or very close on the hierarchy in terms of getting that front done so that I won't have to be so embarrassed again. The next thing I want to talk about, early in the month I went to the Parks and Recs committee meeting, and we had some really good conversations and discussions, and the chairperson and co-chairperson were pointedly asked if they would be willing and able to work together. They both stated that they could and that they were willing to work together, and when I left them, they were actively communicating. So I'm standing before you now to make a plea that we make no changes to the leadership of that committee. They're new, basically, in leadership positions, and I am a firm believer that all leaders are supposed to promote and help and build leadership skills in others, and I'm asking you to do that. Thank you.
Hi. We're looking at Lincoln Meadows again, the entranceway. I do know it's an issue, and I have talked to Kevin about Lincoln Meadows. The fact is, the changes for Public Works to be able to maintain that is removing all those berms, removing all those bushes, which requires us to have some heavy equipment to go in there and remove everything. So I'll meet with JW again, I'll meet with Kevin to see where it falls underneath the timeline. I know that there is some other things pending right now. We have a certain amount of time to have all our street lights put in. That has got to be completed so that we meet our grant. So they are working on getting that stuff done. As it comes for Parks and Recs, I've made my recommendation, the board has shot it down, so I'm not going any further with that. I'm looking at Parks and Recs, again, to work out their differences. I'm not getting involved with them. However, I am looking for programs that happen for the kids. And I will be pushing very hard on both these individuals to get their differences taken care of and to start thinking about the kids. So, all right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Zenona Ayers, and I address this to you. You can't hear me? No.
Is it on?
Oh, okay. My name is Zenona Ayers, and I address this to you, Mayor, as well as the board. On January 19th, residents presented a no-confidence petition to you and the board. However, we were called liars. I would like this opportunity to ask your concerns about any items on the petition. If I don't have the answer now, I can provide you with supporting documents so you and the board can address our concerns. That's my statement. I need to know what we're going to do about these concerns.
You know, I do know the day, January 19th, and that was when everyone came up with petitions. There were petitions that were all marked out. So all there was, if I remember right, just names. Those petitions had been going around for some time, probably over a year, that we've known that those petitions going around, people were trying to get names on them. I guess like questions that, you know, I don't have the opportunity to respond to the individuals who signed those because all their information was taken off. And in my opinion, that was done for a reason. That was done for a political reason, for people to get that information so that they can contact those individuals when it comes time for election, okay? If you're going to give me a petition, give me a petition with names and addresses so I can reach out to the residents and I can answer each one of those. I have, and again, my first question would be to the residents that signed it. Were this list of demands part of the petition, or just someone asked you to sign for a petition? Again, we know those petitions were out there for over a year, okay? So, you know, I've looked at the, you know, I call them demands. I've looked at the questions. A lot of those questions, there's some that are repeated. There is information that's already available to the residents when it comes to, you know, they talk about, you know, accounts payables. They talk about all kinds of stuff that's already available on the website. We make sure that stuff's available when they ask for it. I think there's a lot of, again, someone just gives me a list of names. You know, you take it a little bit more serious when you can reach out to those residents and talk to them. But my opportunity to talk to those residents to find out their concerns was removed by whoever made the decision to turn in those, by removing all the addresses and stuff. So, you know, again, I've looked at all 35 points. I've got answers to all 35 points. But my answers will come out in due time. And I will reach out to the residents of Sauk Village asking who signed these petitions so that I can meet with them so we can, you know, have a little bit of time to go over some of these. But I've read through them and I've taken the time to answer them. And like I said, everything will come out in due time to show how people were misled. So.
We were never misled. I'll get back to you regarding the names, how we're going to handle that with our committee.
That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Edward Sullivan. I've lived out here since 1969. I've been through about 5 administrations, and we've always had good luck in the Parks and Recreation. I'm a member of the Parks and Recreation, and right now I'm trying to promote the basketball program, and it seems like I run against the wall, and I don't get it done. I was told that kids out here don't want the basketball program. They took a survey. They said they had surveyed. They don't want it. I went out myself, and I got the petitions. I went up to the store. I sat there for 2-3 hours, and I got signatures on there that people want the basketball program out here. And what can we do to make this happen? I have everything ready to go. I have the rules, regulations, referees, sponsors. I have everything. All I need is the cooperation of the Parks and Recreation and the chairman of that committee.
Is that all you have?
That's it.
Do you want to respond? I cannot answer for the Parks and Recs. The chair says he has your phone number, so he'll get back with you. Is that correct? I'm not.
We've spoken numerous times. So.
We have not spoken. All we've had is that you do not want the program.
Mr. Sullivan, okay, you've yielded the floor, and the chair does not want to answer at this time, so it's sorry. All right.
That's it?
That's it for right now.
Okay.
All right, next.
But we do need programs out here.
All righty, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Hello, sir.
My name is Cleachi Lawrence, and I am a non-resident of Sauk Village. I like to be a guest. If I be a guest, maybe I will be treated with respect. We all need respect. I was very disrespected in the community, in the senior citizen building. The chairman disrespected me and my group. She hate black people.
All right.
And if we can't have respect in the senior citizen, how do you expect respect over here? Ain't no respect coming here because ain't no respect in the senior citizen. And I know that. And I need to be saying that there's going to be respect. Now, someone would talk about my friend was a white racist. I never did say this lady was racist. I asked a question. And didn't nobody get mad at me because they said my friend was a white racist. But they were mad when I asked the question. And they lashed out to me. So don't respect in here. Einstein started at insanity to expect respect. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Just so everyone's aware, I guess I'm the new chair of the senior committee because the last senior committee chair resigned. So just so that make sure we're clear, I do respect you. I do respect everyone here. So when the statement was made about the chair of the senior committee, I am now the chair of the senior committee. So I just want to make sure that, you know, I understand that you're talking about someone else because you said she. So just want to make sure that we're careful there. Thank you.
Mike Williams, 1633-216. Mr. Mayor, I have one thing I would like to ask of you and the board. Speak up. I would like to ask you and the board this. Is it possible to start the meeting at 7 o'clock, business until 8:30, question answered at 9 o'clock, and we go home? Is that possible to put something like that together? Second of all, I hear this question all the time about where's the money going, who doing what with the money and everything like that. If you just think about last week, just think the last meeting you had. The lawyers sit there and cost this village $700. That is much as all you trustees up there make. So why not? To me, I don't understand it to stand up here for 3 minutes and talk about something that you talked about last week or 2 weeks ago and things like that. But another thing I'd like to understand and get people to understand is the village itself know that the money we get in is the water, taxes, and a levy. Now the levy we have, I don't think a lot of people know what a levy is. Levy ain't nothing but a person paying you rent. That's all it is. So explain it to them, they can understand that part. Tell them it's paying you rent for where they use it from. That's what we have for our business. And they have to understand that. And quit letting people tell them all the time, well, the mayor don't do this, the mayor do that. I tell you what you do. Other than the mayor, tell me somebody else on this board that do what you do. Tell me that person. Tell them to stand up and show them to me right now. That's what I got to say.
All right, thank you very much. All right, anyone else? All right.
Pat Couch, just for the fact of cost, the fact that we have gone over this ordinance, I can't even tell you how many times, and I'd like Mr. Myers to explain how much money this has cost our village because we can't get this word right, that word right. Let's do it again, let's do it again. How many times have this thing been brought forward because of maybe one little word or somebody doesn't like this word? How much has this cost our village to go back and forth all these months and finally hopefully have a resolution? Could you give us a clue, Mr. Myers? Thank you.
Well, I don't, the trustees, it's annual salary to attend the meeting, so the figure's 100, what did I say, annual salary? It's 125, I think, per meeting. And then I know we had 3 meetings on that, and you count the trustees, count the mayor, and then the citizens that comes to the meeting, there's no fees there. I haven't turned in a slip for that meeting for a long time, so I can't put an exact figure on it, but if you give me a couple of days, I will get you an exact figure and be glad to either announce it next week or hand deliver you by certified mail or hand it to you. But exactly, I can't give you an exact figure, but that's the easiest way to figure it out.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll move to miscellaneous business. Oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees. Good evening, my name is Datron Williams. My questions are related, and my comments are related to the current public comments ordinance. Under the current ordinance, my understanding is that there's a limit of an hour placed on each resident with the 3-minute requirement. And if that's the case, only 20 residents can speak for that hour allotted time. My concern is that that's limiting, since the village does have 10,000 residents, and they would not be able to speak throughout the duration of the meeting. I think that should be looked at once again to try to figure out a better solution to that limitation. Second, with regards to the police presence, I appreciate the police being here for a safety concern. I think other residents will kind of agree with that. As regards with the police being here, I think a secondary benefit to their presence is that we like to see them being represented within the community in a more of a civil setting instead of being seen when we get pulled over, have to be called to a disturbance. As well as being a potential deterrent to any liability issues that may be a result from any unruly resident. And the next concern would be with labeling someone as unruly. I know the term respect has been thrown around a lot tonight, and respect is very subjective. And some people may come up here and curse and use very quote-unquote hostile language, but that may be the only lexicon they know to communicate their self effectively and efficiently. So I think limiting them, even though they may be threats, may be considered threats by one person, they should not be limited to that. And if that is a concern of the trustees themselves, they may need to contact the police and do an investigation so the judiciary can figure that out and not leave that up to the Board of Trustees in more of a civil setting. And finally, if the overall objective is to have more dialogue, I really appreciate if more of the trustees would come to town hall meetings or facilitate town hall meetings, because if you want that dialogue, it should be open. It should not be left to a number on an agenda to limit the residents. It should be more of an open discussion where they can voice their concerns and kind of reach solutions for the village. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
We'll run through these real quick. On the 1-hour limit, the statement is the public comment portion of the meeting will not exceed 1 hour unless the majority of the board agrees to extend the time limit. So, you know, I don't think we've gone over an hour in comments in a long time. So we've got that. You talk about the police presence. We try to make sure we put a positive. You know, we've got the police chief back there in a suit and tie. It looks pretty good. We talk about unruly. Unruly from the ordinance has been removed so that it does not point out one person. However, order and decorum is part of running a meeting. So if you don't have order and decorum, that means you've got people who are unruly. So, but that portion has been taken out. And you talk about the town hall meetings. We'd love to see some of these trustees get up and start having their own trustees town hall meetings. We can have more. But we have Meet the Mayor on the second Saturday of every month. and the residents come out. We meet out in the lobby. We set chairs up out there, and again, try to make sure we answer questions for the residents. We go over their concerns. We had some good comments and some good concerns that we went over this last week. So it's a time where people can come, talk freely. There's no limit on time, especially at Meet the Mayor, except for it's from 9 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock. And a lot of times I stay here past 11, talking to residents. And this last week, my wife made cupcakes for Valentine's Day. So too bad y'all didn't show up. You could have some cupcakes. And I have to admit, I went home and I ate the icing that was left over, so it was pretty good. But again, I think you bring up a good point. You know, if we can have one trustee have town hall meetings, I'd like to see more. And maybe we get some of these other trustees to get involved and have their own meetings. All right, anyone else? All right, hearing none, move to the next. We got miscellaneous business, comments from the board of trustees. Trustee Williams, you got anything?
Trustee Williams?
No.
All right. We got Trustee Burgess?
Yes, Mayor. I just wanted to remind everyone tomorrow there will be a town hall meeting here from 7 to 8:30. So all are welcome to come out and express their opinions. And irregardless of what you people may think, come out and listen for yourself. Then you can judge if it's political or not, because I'm tired of hearing that it's a political meeting. Come out and listen and hear for yourself, and you make a determination. Thank you. And Mayor, I think I need to find out from you if we, because you told me that you cannot have two trustees meet at the same time with yourself, but we do need a meeting in regards to Public Works Committee. That's all I have.
Public Works Committee, I can, because if you read the ordinance, it says the mayor serves as a non-voting member. So try to let me know when you guys' next meeting is.
It's every second Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock here at the Village Hall.
Which was what, last Wednesday, or is it?
Yes, this was last Wednesday, yes.
Okay. So what we'll do is let's make sure I'm on your next agenda, because I can come to your meetings as a non-voting member according to the ordinance.
Because we asked the Public Works Director to come, and we invited him, and I also informed the village administrator, and neither did I get a phone call or the Public Works Director never showed up, and no one called to let me know that he wasn't coming, but he was on our agenda, and he got a copy of the agenda. So I still, to this day, don't know why and what happened. So we need to have a meeting to find out what we're going to do, because if we're spinning our wheels, we need to find that out. The next committee meeting will be the second Wednesday in March, 7 o'clock here in Village Hall.
It still stands that 3 or more trustees in the meeting. We can't.
Oh, you can come to the meeting. As many trustees, this is an open meeting. You just can't participate.
So we won't be in violation of the open meeting there?
Not if you, I mean, the meeting is public.
Yeah.
The meeting is a public meeting, so I mean, and it's, the agenda is
As long as we
posted.
don't talk about village business.
You can't, absolutely.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is the standing committee.
The standing committee would be myself and Trustee Jones.
Right. So the standing committee,
6:30.
I can be there. Okay.
At 6:30.
Right. Right. Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Trustee Tates.
My first two items are personal items. I still would like a key to the front door to Village Hall so I can gain entry. The second thing is that I'd like to have a copy of the statement that was submitted for your special meeting that was held last week. So if I can get that before I leave tonight, that'd be easy. The key, I'd like to know when I can get a key to the front door.
What was the second one? Special what?
You called a special meeting, and you're supposed to write a statement that you're calling a special meeting, what it's about, and that kind of thing.
It's just the agenda.
No, the statute, as the mayor always says there's a statement, and you can consult the mayor. The final thing is that Ms. Brewer brought up about the treasurer and all that stuff. There is a state statute which does not govern payment. As everyone may know, that even though he admitted to committing a crime, that can go on for a year or more in the state of Illinois. So he's on the payroll and he's receiving pay. There is a state statute which states that he can be removed from pay status. And it takes the mayor to initiate that and the trustees to vote on it. So for Ms. Brewer, there is some relief. He does not have to be paid until he goes to trial a year or 2 years from now by state statute. That does not have to be. It just takes the mayor to take an affirmative action on it. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Jones.
Parks and Recs is presenting Open Gym Day. That's Saturday, February 27, 2016, starting at 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. At the community center. Admission is free, and there will be light refreshments from 50 cents to $1. There will be at 11 o'clock starting basketball, youth basketball, team board games, jump rope competition, individual competition. From 12:15, that would be team basketball, 13 and older. Youth games and competitions. Line dancing at 12:30 with Miss Tina. 1:30 double dutch competition, and then there will be awards for all of the competitions at 2:30, and it will conclude at 3 o'clock. The flyers I have one flyer, and I need to make up a few more, but they will be available no later than tomorrow. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say briefly that the play is underway. We will be having rehearsal every Saturday from now until play date, April the 15th, which is a Friday, at Rickover at 6 o'clock. We do have flyers about the play. We do have flyers about rehearsals, so if anybody wants to be a part of the play or a part of the cast, you can contact me. We will be having rehearsals at the community center every Saturday from 11 to 1:30. Meet me there. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Myers.
All right, I will be calling a special meeting for my committee. Do a telephone, I'll call and see if I can get them in here by Thursday, 7 p.m. here at the board. Other than that, we are working closely with the police department on investigation of a suspicious fire that happened a few weeks ago. And we're moving on it, and the detective has a person who's very interested that we will talk to him. And with the fire marshal, was pretty close to him coming down with some indictments on him. So that's all I have, sir. Okay, Friday.
Unless you want to do it at 10 o'clock.
Unless you want to have it at 10 o'clock.
I will be up. Will you be up?
I'm just letting you know.
All right. It'll be Friday, sir.
All right.
Trustee Tate, I just emailed you the information. I just emailed you the information about the special.
All righty. No. There'll be no executive session. So, a few things I have here. Trustee Myers, I think we've talked briefly about it, but 4th of July, are you going to handle that this year? 4th of July parade?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll work on getting you some additional people, but.
I need to give them, or are you signing that project to be a chairperson of the 4th of July? I'll be glad to jump in there and help as I have the last 10, 15 years in this town.
Good, so we'll make you chair of 4th of July parade. All right?
All right.
So, I want to start off early because it seems like every year we go a little bit later, a little bit later. Here we are in February. We just got a few months to go. Let's see here. I do have a question for Parks and Recs. There was a meeting at the community center last Saturday that wasn't on the calendar. What was that meeting?
It's on the, that was with SVCPA.
And
they have application they put in, and it's been in for the longest.
And they're paying their monthly payment?
No.
Rental fee?
No, I just continued what was going on. I thought it was a good idea that Jill Hoskins started with it, and I just continued the same road.
John Hoskins didn't start with anything.
Yes, he did. There's an application back there that he signed off on for no fees.
For April only?
Okay, well, I just continued on since that was April, and in May was the election. I got elected in, so I just felt to continue unless otherwise
but you don't
there's
have
any other.
You don't have the authority because if you look at the rental policy, it requires a rental fee. It requires where I pull all this stuff up. Reservations. It requires a deposit. Security deposit. It requires to have a fee paid.
Okay, so it didn't happen with the previous trustee. So, I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing of that.
No, it's not, because we talked about what the rental policy was for the Parks and Recs, and you received a copy of it.
And this was done before then. This was done prior to me even being in this seat.
And we've talked about this also, personally, back and forth. So there is an ordinance, there is a policy through the village. It's not through Parks and Recs. You are to enforce a village policy, which requires for everything to be filled out, along with a deposit, along with a fee.
Okay.
So, and again, remember, your committee consists of the two sitting next to each other. The chair cannot make a decision without the co-chair. Read your ordinance. You have to be in agreement before you can make a decision. Okay. The other thing is, I made a statement at the last board meeting about trustees and about your committees. Okay. I don't know if anyone remembers, but going back quite a few meetings, we had a resident come up and said, how do we know if a trustee is having a meeting and how do they get paid? We talked about trustees fill out a form and we're on an honor system. Okay. It's been brought to my attention that, again, remember, you get paid for your standing committees only. It makes it very clear in the ordinance that subcommittees are not compensated for subcommittees. Standing committees are the ones that you have with your trustee. I made a statement last meeting that if you're filling out your forms and you're not having your standing committees and you're getting paid, number one, you are falsifying records, and number two, you're stealing money. All right? So what I've done is put together a new committee payment request because it needs to be done. So with the chair, if you chair the committee, you're going to have to still continue filling these out, but it will require your co-chair to say that you were at your meeting, and it will require your agenda also. So going forward, you will need to turn these in to get paid, to reimburse for your payment. All right? So complaint has been brought to my attention, so I am going back for this last year. And again, read your policy and your ordinance. The ordinance says that you're supposed to have your meetings in writing to the village clerk, and you're supposed to have agendas, and you're supposed to have minutes, according to the Open Meetings Act. And again, it's not through your subcommittees. It is your standing committees. Those are the ones. Your standing committee, you guys can work it out. So it's by Open Meetings Act. Open Meetings Act says you have to have minutes and you have to have an agenda. So you have to have it. So what I'm doing is I've requested for the last year to have all the sign sheets that were submitted And then we're going back to the village clerk. I'm going to ask her to submit the minutes and the agendas that were for those months to find out who got paid for meetings and do you have your stuff in order. So, and we're going to do it because I received a complaint that, first of all, a resident came and, again, I sat here and said we were on an honor system. But it's been brought to my attention that meetings are not being held between subcommittee or between standing committees, and trustees are getting paid. So I will look into it. All I can say is if you've taken money from the village by not having a standing committee, I would encourage you to get with Mohan and pay that money back. All right?
Question.
Trustee.
So you tell me when your co-chair and chair are present at one meeting, that's not considered, you're not, that's a totally different meeting? You have to have a totally separate meeting, or you can't conduct business at one time with your co-chair?
Your standing committee, I don't know if I have it, the ordinance with me. Standing committee, that's right here, shall be held and called by the chairperson of the committee in such time and place and designated in a call in accordance with all local ordinances and Open Meetings Act. The chair is responsible for notifying the clerk in writing of all meetings at the beginning of the year and notify the dates of changes prior to the meeting dates. The chair is responsible for posting and verifying the timely posting of all meetings in accordance to local ordinances. Now, when you get down to subcommittees makes it very clear. It says from time to time, as needed, the chairperson of a standing committee may appoint or dismiss a subcommittee made of village residents to assist in the committee in its work. Subcommittees shall not be compensated and shall only be advisory. Subcommittees shall be subcommittee chairs persons shall be appointed and removed by the committee chairperson. So just want you all to be aware of what the ordinance says. Make sure you're following the ordinance. And when you're giving your reports on the bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, you're giving reports from your standing committee. Okay? Your subcommittees are separate, but made up of village residents.
Who can come to your standing committee? Can anybody come to your standing committee?
You've got, your standing committee is made up between the two trustees.
Can anyone come to your
It's an open meeting.
It's an open meeting?
Yep.
So therefore, if you have someone there, they can take minutes for that meeting that you have between you and your co-chair, correct?
If someone wants to take minutes for you.
That's what I'm saying. So they can take minutes from that. What's to stop you from killing two birds with one stone?
Because if I read it again, you would find out, again, I'm telling you, you would pull the ordinance, okay? The ordinance says that the subcommittee is appointed by the chair. It's made up of village residents to assist the committee in its work. Subcommittees are not compensated and shall be advisory only. Subcommittee chairpersons, that's not the chair, you or anyone sitting on this board. It says the committee's chairperson shall be appointed or removed by the committee chairperson. Your subcommittees are totally different, and they're advisory to you board, to you trustees.
Mr. Mayor, my question is, if you have a meeting with your co-chair, what's stopping other people from being present at that meeting?
I'm not saying anything's stopping.
Okay, so then what's wrong with killing two birds with one stone? If you're talking to your
do you have two agendas?
If you're talking to your committee, co-chair, and you have an agenda, what's wrong with talking to your co-chair about what's going on the agenda, someone taking minutes or whatever, and presenting those? Because my question is, why would you have a meeting with your co-chair at one time and then come back and have a meeting with your same co-chair and then you have people present?
Because you don't have to. Because your subcommittee is made up of village residents. They have their own
But you said village residents can come to the, you said village residents can come to the meeting with you and your co-chair.
Right.
You said that. So what's the difference in having that done at the same time? Why do you have to have separate meetings?
Do you have two agendas?
You can have the same agenda that you and your co-chair are talking about. You just happen to have people present.
Again, subcommittees are as...
I didn't say subcommittees.
I know, but trustee, it says subcommittees are as needed, the way the ordinance reads.
I'm not talking about subcommittee. I'm talking about people being present at your meeting that you're having with your co-chair.
Okay.
And you discuss the agenda that you have on hand with your co-chair.
Okay.
And you have someone take minutes from that meeting. What's wrong with that?
Is it your standing committee or is it a subcommittee?
It's your standing committee that you and your co-chair are having.
Okay. As long as you're having your standing committee.
You and your co-chair are discussing what it is you would like to move and do with your committee and what they would like to do. Someone sitting there taking the minutes. So why would you have to have one meeting at one time and then another? In other words, the people that come out sit two different meetings. Why would you do that? Why would you subject anybody to that?
Because you have a standing committee and you have a subcommittee.
Correct. But you cannot incorporate both of them at the same time. I mean, that's like tonight. You have one meeting now. If you and your co-chair are sitting there talking about the agenda and the people are present, what's wrong with that?
And if you're doing it right, you're going to send information to your subcommittee. Remember, your subcommittee is an advisory board back to the Board of Trustees. So you're sending information to a subcommittee, and they will make advice and send it back to the chair or to the standing committee.
Mayor, you've been trustee for longer than anybody sitting here. This is the first time we've ever had co-chairs for a committee since you've been mayor. Before then, we've had a chairman of a committee, and they came back and brought whatever, and they had their meetings once a month with the people that belong to their committee. All of a sudden now, that the money has to be a certain way, and then you're talking about a criminal element where they don't pay the money back if they have a meeting and they're taking money and they're criminals and you're going to prosecute.
I'm saying
that's not I don't understand where that's at. But to have a redundant meeting, if I have a meeting at 6:30 and I have my co-chair there, we discuss the agenda, people are sitting there, and I have someone to take notes. That's all. That's all I need. Why do I need to have another meeting and have two different agendas for the same meeting?
Because your subcommittee would have their own agenda.
But I don't need to have a subcommittee. I can kill two birds with one stone. Why should I even have?
If you don't need a subcommittee, you don't have a subcommittee. Then you would be having a standing committee.
Then I would just have a standing committee with everybody there, and I'm talking to my co-chair. And then yes, you have an open meeting, so you will have input from people that are sitting there.
If you have a standing committee, you're going to have one ordinance. If you have a subcommittee, you're going to have one agenda. If you have a subcommittee, they're going to have a second agenda. And they will be working off the stuff that the standing committee sends.
That's something that I want to see that is going to be, you said you're going to press charges or whatever.
I never said press charges.
Well, you said that they're going to have to pay. You said there's a criminal element. That's a criminal element, and they should pay the money back. And if not, Mohan, that's pressing charges. And I don't understand that. I mean, this is something.
If you're guilty, then you got
people were present.
If you're not stealing money, then you have
it's
to
not stealing. I don't know why you keep saying
if you're not falsifying documents.
That's not falsifying documents. You had a meeting. It had an agenda, and you took notes, and you have minutes. That's not falsifying anything. You have a meeting. You had an agenda. It was open to everybody. How's that falsifying anything?
Well, you have nothing to worry about if you're not doing anything wrong.
No, I'm not worried about it. I'm saying what you're talking about, what you're putting down here, what you're implying is wrong. I'm just hoping that you find out about that, because that's wrong.
It is wrong if you're falsifying records. With that said, I ask for a motion to adjourn. Got a motion? Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Ed second.
Yes, she can. She can do that.
Ed seconded.
She can do that.
No, Ed. Okay, whatever.